Okay, we are live.
Awesome. Love to go live. Welcome to the Pistons Talk Podcast on YouTube. I'm your host, Lance Caparosi. Follow me on Twitter at Lance Caparosi. I promise you guys I'm worth it. Follow my co-host, Anthony, at Pistons Talk if you haven't already. On Twitter at Pistons Talk. And then we got our special guest, Mike Carisse. I apologize if I said your name wrong. But
you're right.
Follow him as
Yeah,
well.
That's right. That's right.
Your Twitter name is the same, right, as your name?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
TikTok. That's where I got most of my stuff going on. They almost took all my livelihood away from me for about a week there, but we're back, and I'm glad to be here, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry about that intro as well. Normally, I swear to God, I'm more professional than that. But let's just get this started. Now, let's talk about the Pistons. Biggest news coming in the offseason, Dwane Casey stepping down as the head coach, which is crazy. I thought he would be back next year, but he will be in a different role, no longer the head coach. What are you guys' thoughts on Dwane Casey stepping down as the head coach? Whoever wants to start, Mike, never mind. You start. You're the guest.
All right. I feel like with Dwane Casey, this was evident from the second Troy took over. Like, Dwane was brought in to try to push a team with Andre and Blake into the playoffs, make them at least they said contender, but we all knew realistically second round max if we were really stretching it. And with that, the organization has changed under Casey, and he just knows that this isn't his role. And he's at a point in his career where he didn't want to even coach on the Pistons for the year that Tom Gores hired him on. He actually wanted to take a year off. This is going to give him time to step into a different role, explore some new things. And I also got to credit Casey. I feel like, yes, we a lot of times disagree with his rotations, but he didn't screw this up with development. We didn't ruin anyone yet. So shout out to Casey. Appreciate what he did for us, but I think it was due time.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. And, man, he came into a situation where he was talking about you had Reggie Jackson, Andre Drummond, Blake Griffin. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. And then they transitioned to this rebuild, which is incredibly tough on any coach. We can all agree on that. But you're right, Mike. He didn't mess it up. The development of Jaden Ivey was huge. Cade Cunningham, Isaiah Stewart, look where he's at now as a basketball player. He did some great things with some of the guys here. And, the wins and the losses, they sucked, but, the development and not screwing anybody over, that's so important. But, Anthony, what are your thoughts on Dwane Casey?
I think the only person he screwed up was Sekou. That's about it. But,
Yeah,
we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. I think as a coach, I think Mike hit it right on the head. He was brought in to compete for the playoffs, and he went 41-41 that year. We all know what happened. Blake gets hurt, and Giannis swept their ass. The following year, they decide we're going to trade Andre Drummond for a bag of Kit Kats, and we really didn't get anything out of it. I mean, you got I think Brandon Knight and John Henton in the second round pick we didn't even keep. And then it was just kind of a trickle down from that. I mean, you traded Derrick Rose. You couldn't trade Blake Griffin. No one wanted him. You had to buy him out. So, I mean, yeah. I think other than that, I think what I will give Casey credit for is just letting the guys play and not ripping them out if they made a mistake. And I think that has really helped out with their development. Like Plant said, Isaiah Stewart, I think, to me, was one of the players that has developed the most this season, right up there with Jaden Ivey. Obviously, we didn't really get to see Cade Cunningham too much this year, but John Beilein says he's going to be scary next season with his shot. He's been working on a shot with John Beilein, I guess, all year. So that's really good to see. But I think his tenure in Detroit will be similar to Stan Van Gundy's. They tried to push for the playoffs, and, they really couldn't do anything and get out of the first round.
Especially considering mentioning SVG, just the fact that Casey really had no control over the roster. Like, the fact we even put up more than 30 points a night with a lot of the roster change that we had under Casey's system was impressive, because you got to scheme differently every time you lose a guy, especially any starter that was giving you shit at the time.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the job he did. I mean, he only had 8 guys the other night. That's an incredibly tough job. And a lot of those dudes aren't even probably going to be on NBA rosters next year. And he was dealing with that for, 3 seasons now? I mean, we were cheering for Frank Jackson, Svi Mykhailiuk, Tyler Cook of all people. Man, there were so many Braxton Key, another name we can throw out there. Shout out to him for winning the G League championship. But anyways, it's, he just had so many different random guys that haven't even been on other NBA rosters. It's an incredibly tough position he was put in. I couldn't ask for a better person to have that position that he did and do the job that he did. Yeah, no, not many wins, but development and, just, not messing things up, man. We're sitting good with a good core of players. And by all accounts, nobody hated Dwane Casey and nobody wants out of Detroit. So that's a win in my book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think his quote was
100%.
I think one of his quotes was saying, no one has been arrested. And I think that was kind of like a jab at Ja when the Ja stuff came out. And like I saw Keith Black tweet that out earlier and I just started laughing. I was like, dude, if that's the standard, let's go.
That's amazing for sure. Oh man. Let's talk about rookie seasons though. Cade Cunningham or Jaden Ivey, who had a better rookie season? Anthony, I'm going to turn it over to you first. Who had a better rookie season between these two top 5 picks?
I got to go Cade Cunningham just because I think Jaden Ivey, he started off really hot, kind of hit a little bit of a rookie wall, and then he got out of it really quickly. But I think Cade Cunningham's body of work, it was just more consistent. Like between February and March, he was putting up 21, 7, and 7. And we just saw that out of Jaden Ivey, I believe, in March and April, where he started, putting up 20 point per game averages in March. But to me, I think Cade Cunningham, we kind of got robbed, obviously, with the ankle injury and preseason. But I think overall, this is going to be a all-star backcourt next season, in my personal opinion. You got 2 guys that can get you 20 points a game, can pass the ball. And I'm really excited for the future of this team, honestly, man.
Same. Mike, what about you? Who had a better rookie season?
This is tough because Cade obviously came out. You knew from the jump he was going to be the star, and this is his team. But I feel like Ivy, just due to the fact that he stepped up, and with Cade, we had a consensus number 1. This was a guy who we knew was going to be 1, he was going to get the team. Ivy came in, had to be the 1 in the season. He was expected to be the 2. And not only that, he showed us that we made the right pick and also showed us some skills that we didn't really know he had. Like his playmaking was a lot better than we expected. His shot at times was better than we thought. And with Ivy, I think that's why I want to give him the edge because we don't have FOMO. We didn't watch that Pacers game last 2 nights ago and see him go against Matthew and go, we screwed that one up. I'd rather have Benedict Matthew. No, I like Jaden Ivey on my team, and that's what I feel. How are you? How are you feeling, Lance?
This is tough for me because, I love Cade Cunningham's game, and, you definitely see the potential with him being, the guy on this team. But Jaden Ivey, I think I got to give him the edge just because of the development as a playmaker and really, as a spot-up shooter, just the overall development of his game from game 1 to game 82. I think Cade had better overall numbers than him, but I got to give the slight edge to Jaden Ivey just because of the development of him. And, he played, I think it was Detroit Kool-Aid. He had tweeted at me something that he plays every game like it's game 7 of the finals. And that type of energy and that type of play is just incredible, especially on a losing team. They only won 17 games, but to go out there and play like every game mattered, that says something and it sets a tone. So I just got to give it the slight edge to Jaden Ivey, but it's not by much, but I'm going to give it to Jaden Ivey. But I also, real quick, I also think the reason I'm giving it to Jaden Ivey is because the expectations for Cade were so much higher. And, in Jaden Ivey, I was saying he probably averaged 13 to 15 points a game for the season. My expectations were kind of low. They were much higher for Cade because he was just much more of a polished player coming in. So Jaden Ivey surprised me. So I'm going to give it to him.
Mm-hmm. I'm just glad we got both of them. I'm really happy.
Oh, dude, 100%. And then on top of that, you got Jalen Duren and then another top 5 pick coming in this year. It's most fan bases would be so fucking jealous of us right now. It's just incredible the guys we get to watch for the next few years. Yeah. Let's keep the what's that?
No, I said it's just funny. We say that other fan bases are jealous, but you scroll on your Twitter account and you would think that we just have a bunch of bums on our damn roster because you got Pistons Twitter arguing each other. No, Jaden Ivey sucks. No, Cade's a bust. I'm like, dude, what the hell are you guys talking about? You have an all-star potential backcourt and they're in their 20s and they're still in rookie deals. When they're getting extensions, they're probably going to be in the $200 million range. So chill the hell out.
That's crazy. Let's keep the conversation on Jaden Ivey. Has he convinced either of you guys that they should pass on Scoot Henderson if the Pistons were in position to draft Scoot Henderson? Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you first, man. What are your thoughts on that?
So I feel like this – I have to choose my words carefully because I feel like we're going to get into another Wiseman, Duren, Stu, Bagley situation with that. Very similarly, it all just depends how the ping pong balls fall. If we get 3 or 4, he's not going to be there. And I'm happy getting a Brandon Miller. I like the power forward out of Houston, Jarris Walker. If we're putting somebody in this system to help the team overall or trading back, I'm good with that. I wouldn't be mad with Scoot Henderson, but I feel like the Pistons have their guys. They can get it somewhere else, and they have what they need. Go out and get something else, get some more capital, and move forward with it.
Nice. So you're saying Jaden Ivey's pass on Scoot Henderson, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. What about you, Anthony?
So this is where I'm kind of like a draft sicko.
Yeah.
I would draft Scoot, but I'm trading him immediately to see what I can get.
Okay.
If I get the second pick, I think there's more trade value in Scoot Henderson than there would be a Brandon Miller right now. And I think there would be teams willing to give you some serious assets, young players, potential first-round picks for a Scoot Henderson because he's kind of that athletic bouncy guard that you see in draft classes like the Russell Westbrooks, the Derrick Rose, the John Morants. That's kind of like the tier where these draft experts are kind of saying what he'll actually be in the NBA. I don't know what he'll be, but, I think if you would ask me right now, I think I would draft him at 2 if the Pistons do get 2 and try to maybe trade down to 3. And then you can get your Brandon Miller, like Mike said, or
Exactly.
Jarris Walker, or a Cam Whitmore, or there's just so many good players in the top 5. I mean, I didn't even mention the Thompson brothers. Like, they're great too. So, I mean, either way, the Detroit Pistons are going to get a talented player to plug into this roster next season. But if it was me, I'm drafting Scoot at 2 and trying to trade to see what I can get for him.
All right, I'm passing on Scoot if the Pistons got. If we got number 2, I'm passing on Scoot. I'm drafting Brandon Miller because when have we decided that a 6'2" guard is more valuable than a 6'8" perimeter player that plays both ways? You know what I'm saying? I mean, like all this time we always talk about length and size, and guys that can play multiple positions. You get that with Brandon Miller, and I've seen Jaden Ivey what he's done against NBA defenses this entire season. I am confident that this dude is just going to continue to get better and better. And his game and Cade's game, they mesh so well together. We're going to get that. We're going to get into that later on in the podcast. But, man, I like what I've seen from Jaden Ivey. I have no concerns about him. Even though Cade has been hurt, that's my biggest concern with him is the injuries. But, man, when he has played and when he's been on, he has looked really good. So why would I want to put the ball in both those guys' hands. I'm drafting for fit. That's Brandon Miller. I'm passing on Scoot. I know a lot of Pistons fans hate to hear that, but I just don't think, how like people are saying like, well, look at Cleveland. They drafted Colin Sexton, then they drafted Darius Garland, but then they traded Colin Sexton for Donovan Mitchell. Those type of trades do not happen all the time. That was just a once in a lifetime opportunity because the Utah Jazz's back was up against the wall with Donovan Mitchell. They knew he wanted out and they had to get him out. They basically just had to take best offer. And they got Lauri Markkanen. That was a huge get for them. I don't think anybody thought he would be an all-star. I felt like at the time he was more of just a throw-in player at that. So kudos to them. But trades like that just don't happen. So people say, oh, well, we could just – Anthony, I get what you're saying. You could trade him right on draft. Like that number 2 overall pick is very valuable. But I'm just saying if you draft Scoot and you play him throughout the year and then you try to trade him, I just don't think you're going to get that Donovan Mitchell Godfather offer for him because they're just not always out there like that. And I think if the Pistons say, look, we got to trade one of these guys, that trade offer, the value of it is just going to go down because teams know you have to get rid of these guys. So I think it just ultimately puts them in a tough spot. But go on.
No, I'm just saying, like, you never know when, Jaylen Brown wants out. Like,
True.
Let's say you offer Scoot, and I don't know, what are you offering Scoot and I don't know, Jalen Duren to Boston? Would they take it? Like, that's what you have to kind of think of the back of your mind because as much of the Pistons been rebuilding for like the last 4 years, you kind of have to think in the back of your mind, there's always going to be a star player that wants out.
True.
There's always going to be a star player that wants out because in today's NBA, it's all about ring culture. Like everyone wants to win a championship. Everyone's trying to team up with everyone. And I know the new CBA kind of like cock block that, but there will still be players that want to try to compete for a championship. So my thought process with that is I'm going to draft Scoot because I know there are going to be players that, want to get out. because, like I said, I guarantee you there's going to be a superstar this summer that wants out, and there's going to be assets that the Pistons could possibly try to trade.
I feel like.
Oh, go on, Mike. My bad.
So I feel like I'm seeing this somewhere in between you and Lance right now, Anthony, where like if we do have that 2 pick and you can trade Scoot, you're not trading Scoot, you're trading the pick. Sure, a team is going to take Scoot with that pick. At the end of the day, it's the opportunity to draft that high. And I feel like if the Pistons draft Scoot and then attempt to trade him, teams are just going to be like, you're going to be losing. Like, your team is not in a position to win automatically. I'm not going to say that would be bad. I love Scoot Henderson. But they're going to be like, we don't have to trade you at all because we're not going to get better instantly if we have to trade a superstar, a few other assets. And you guys, you have no incentive to trade right now because your team is coming off, 17, 15-win season. And what are you going to do?
I also think, like, what do you think would be more value at the time? The number 2 pick right away? Like, as soon as the ping pong balls hit and the Pistons come with the number 2 pick, do you think they start looking for a trade, or do you think they let Scoot Henderson play for a season and see if they can make this 3-guard lineup work? What do you think would happen? What do you think is the most likely scenario?
I'm fine with that, especially with whoever we hire as a new coach, which we'll get into. I'm fine experimenting and seeing what our identity is, because we don't know that yet as this team. Yeah. Are we a 3-guard lineup? Are we somebody who can run Wiseman and Duren and essentially 3 guards? Are we a team that can run 3 big men in 2 guards? Like, what is this team? And that comes down to what we want to scheme and how we see the future.
Yeah, I just look at it as your 17-win team. I don't think you can draft for fit when you have 17 wins. Now, if we had 45 wins, that's a completely different conversation, in my opinion. But I do think it's going to be a real conversation in the front office over Brandon Miller and Scoot Henderson, because I think I've told you, Lance, they're 1A and 1B to me.
Yeah.
Even though Brandon Miller had a horrific March Madness, he had a groin injury and he wasn't 100% healthy. But we saw what he could do all season. One of the best small forwards in the draft class. I talked with Corey last week because we talked about the same exact topic. Corey said he would go for Brandon Miller at 2 over Scoot. So, like I said, there's going to be a lot of people having the same kind of conversation probably for the next month until we know where we're actually drafting. But getting back to the topic, I think you look at Jaden Ivey and you kind of look at Scoot Henderson. You kind of have to ask yourself, does Jaden Ivey have more of a ceiling than Scoot Henderson does? I think that's what the front office is probably going to have to ask themselves is, will Jaden Ivey be a better player than Scoot Henderson in the long term?
Yeah, that's tough to say, though. I mean, I've said this before. I don't see Scoot Henderson as a generational talent. Like, I don't know what makes him a generational talent. I see it in Victor Wembanyama because he's fucking huge and he can play like a small forward. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't see stuff like that all the time, but we've seen athletic 6'2", 6'3" guards like Derrick Rose, Baron Davis, Steve Francis. The list goes on. So I don't know why people keep calling Scoot Henderson a generational talent. And I know he's great. I mean, dude, that one, I forget what game it was, but just his first step is unbelievable. But I don't think the gap between him and Brandon Miller is all that large. And plus, Brandon Miller's 6'8", 6'9", and he can play the 3, 2, or 4, depending on what you want to do. And like we said before, he kind of reminds us of Paul George. That's a pretty good player to play alongside Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren. So I'm going to stick to my guns, and I'm just going to say Brandon Miller. I would take him over Scoot.
We are forgetting the Thompson brothers, though. Like, we can't get past that. I feel like playing for OTE, though, no one's talking about them like we're talking about these guys who are either in college or in with the Ignite. So are you taking any of the Thompson brothers, though, if you have that pick? If you trade back, are you taking the Thompson brothers?
I've thought about this. Okay, I saw you talking, Anthony, but I have this on my mind just real quick. Like, if I'm at 4, I think I'm taking Jarris Walker out of Houston because I think that's a guy that's going to contribute day one, whether it's off the bench or as a starter. And that's what I want from a top 5 pick. Now, if I'm drafting 5 and Jarris Walker or Brandon Miller those guys are off the board, which they probably will be, I might take a chance on Amin Thompson because I get some Sean Marion vibes. But I also get like, I don't know if you guys remember this name, but DeMar Johnson, he played for like the Atlanta Hawks back in the early 2000s. Dude, same build, same length, came in as kind of like this multifaceted uber athlete on the perimeter, just like the Thompson guys. Couldn't shoot though. And he only played for like 6 or 7 years in the NBA. I don't want I think that's a real possibility for these guys. And I know people say, I think I got into it with me and Wes were talking on Twitter, and he was saying like, well, the defense is good. But if that's their only calling card and their defense is average, that's going to be kind of a problem as well. Like if their defense is supposed to get them on the floor based on what they're doing in the OT, whatever league, I think it's OTE, that league that they're in. But I don't know how that transitions to the NBA because we're talking about professional basketball players in the NBA. Everybody's like in the top 2% of athletes in the world that play in the NBA. And, the league that they're in, that's not the case. So they might be really good defenders there, but how does that translate? I just think there's too many question marks for those guys, but the potential for them is through the roof.
Yeah, I would say if you're looking at a Thompson brother, you're probably looking at Osor over Amin.
Okay.
Just because the shooting is a little bit more consistent, in my opinion. But the thing is, like you kind of touched on it, Lance, is does Troy Weaver have the balls to draft somebody with potential again? Like we all know that he drafted Killian Hayes over Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah.
If you draft another, player that has potential and it doesn't kind of reach, I'm not saying Killian won't reach it, but he's not to the level of a Tyrese Halliburton. I think we can all agree there.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll ever be to that level, but that's the thing you have to ask yourself. Now, if we're between like 4 and 5, I'm really considering Cam Whitmore out of Villanova. I really like his game. I think a lot of people kind of just look over him, maybe because he's at Villanova, and you don't really see guys from Villanova get drafted that damn high. But their track record for players in the NBA, to me, I mean, you look at Josh Hart, you look at Jalen Brunson, even Sadiq Bey, they produce good NBA players, and I would bank on a Cam Whitmore being a very good NBA player if I'm in that 4 to 5 range. But I think, Mike, the Thompson twins are very good players. It's just I question, can they reach their potential in the NBA? And if they can't, that would be kind of two stains on Troy Weaver's draft record really early into his Pistons career.
That's true, but it's also about trusting his vision. But again, this draft, I think it now comes to, you have your foundational pieces. What's your identity? And again, I don't want to be vague. I want to be able to have a take here, not just kind of like talk like vague, but it's just so questionable when you try to figure out what they're really doing here. And me personally, I love that because that means more value for this pick, more trade talks around that, because the Pistons are a question mark. Even if we hire somebody, who are we going to draft? Who are we? And Troy can use that to his advantage. And I think there's a reason we're stockpiling so many bigs right now. I feel like there's a bigger vision we're not seeing. And I don't know, I guess I'm at that level of trust with Troy outside of, the pick he had with Killian. I'm at that level of trust with him where I can see something. And I just don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, I'm not at the point where I'm going to question Troy Weaver just yet. Like, I mean, if he drafts the Thompson's twin at 3, I'd be like, oh, okay. I mean, you see something. I mean, I'm not an expert. I mean, he sees something that I don't. I would put a lot of trust and faith in him. But, man, if you see someone like Brandon Miller just pop off and you had a chance to draft him, that's going to make your stomach churn just a little bit.
Yeah, that's where I was going with it. But I don't think he drafted Killian at 7 and Tyrese was, I think, 13th to the Kings.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to draft the Thompson brother with the 2nd overall pick or even the 3rd overall pick. I think if you're at 4 or 5, then it's a conversation. But I still think he might play the safe route, and that's why I mentioned Cam Whitmore. I would say he's probably the safest pick in the top 5 just because he'll produce.
Definitely. Those Villanova guys, man, they do show out in the NBA. I mean, look at Dante DiVincenzo for Golden State. He's got a solid role with them. I love that guy, man. Even though he did block Charles Matthews at the rim in the national championship game. That was just embarrassing.
I still hate him. I am never going to get over it. Every time I hear his name, I'm like, F that guy. But I got it. He's got game. But I'm never going to let a bald-headed dude drop 44 on my favorite team ever again, even though I can't do anything about it.
Yep.
You say you hate him. I hate Peyton Siva.
Oh, God. And the Pistons drafted him that year, too, over Trey. We passed on Trey and got Peyton Siva.
Oh, that was amazing. Still, that was a clean-ass block, dude. Clean block. You know what sucks about that national championship game? I said something, and then Villanova was like, "Yeah, our team won," and it was this weird thing from Villanova that popped up as a reply from them, congratulating me as a fan. I'm like, this is the worst moment of my sports fandom life. Right now, that Villanova basketball just randomly replied to me and said, "Congratulations, your team won." That hurt. That really hurt. Let's get on to the next topic, though. Who is back from this year's roster? Let's just go down the list, and we'll just have some fun with this. Marvin Bagley. Is he back on this team next year? Do you think they trade him or something, or some other type of move in the offseason?
That's tough to say because he's got $12 million on his contract. He did produce this season, but I don't think there's going to be a team knocking on the door for Marvin Bagley. Not to say he's not a good player. I just think the contract's a little bit of an overpay in my personal opinion. And I think you would have to attach at least an asset or a first-round pick to even try to – or a second-round pick to even move it because hell of a player. He just can't stay healthy.
True. Yeah. So are we in agreement that he'll be back next year, all three of us? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm saying that. Player. Okay, Buddy Boeheim. What about him, Mike? Do you think he'll be back next year?
Hey, man, I love Buddy. I really – he's a great guy. He's a good three-point shooter. I think if he is with the organization, he'll be with the Crews. There is, however, a third two-way slot. This is where my G League. I know all this random stuff about it. This is actually coming into play now. There's now 3 two-way player slots. So they could keep Buddy, keep Jared Rhoden, and still sign another guy. So I could see him sticking around, hypothetically, if you want to keep him in the organization, because you can now, and there's really no risk to it.
Okay. What about you, Anthony? You think Buddy Boeheim is a Piston or a Crews next year?
I don't know. They'll probably sign another Boeheim with that third two-way spot. This kind of seems like what Troy would do. This is not a Troy Weaver slander podcast, I promise you. It's just after a 17-win season, I'm kind of, I don't know, maybe salty a little bit. Yeah. I don't know, man. It's like I watch him in the G League, and he just goes off, it seems like, for 26 points. And then I watch him when he gets called up, and it's kind of like, I don't know if it's maybe he's nervous or maybe it's not enough reps. I think he would be, like, to Mike's point, I think he would be great in the G League, but I think that's all he'll ever be. It's just a really good G League player.
I'm going to go ahead and say they bring him back. I don't know why. It wouldn't hurt them to bring him back. He's still a sniper like that. That's an elite skill set that can translate. But we'll even see if he gets the opportunity. I'm expecting way more than 17 wins next year. Bojan. Do we think he's going to be back? I know he signed the extension, but you never know. I mean, there were rumors about Troy trying to trade him during the season, but do you think he'll be back next year?
I think it just depends on the trade market. If Troy gets the right price, but gut instinct, no, until we can find someone who can shoot better than him.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say they keep him. I don't see them trading him this offseason. I think he's going to be a part of this team for like the next 2 years at least, or until, he retires. Alec Burke, though, this is an interesting one because, you got the development of Jaden Ivey. Killian Hayes is probably still going to be here. Cade Cunningham's coming back. You don't know what they're going to do with the top 5 pick. We got another player on this list that might be coming back to the team. But Alec Burke, my thoughts are he comes back to the Pistons this year, but I'm also like, he's probably the one player that I'm like 50-50 on that he might not be here. But what about you, Anthony? You think Alec Burks is going to be here next year?
I know he's going to be back. Okay. They already talked about giving him an extension similar to Bojan's.
Okay.
So
sweet.
Kind of in the ballpark, which I kind of think would be $20 million is a lot for Alec Burks. But I think they kind of like his veteran leadership. And me and you have talked all year about foundation. I think he's a foundation piece. I think you kind of saw Jaden Ivey pick up some of his foul baiting towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
I just think he's a good veteran to keep on this team, but I think he will be back next season.
Okay. So, I think we can all say that we think he's going to be back. So let's go to Hamidou Diallo, though. We'll be quick about this. Hamidou Diallo, is he coming back next year? I think this is the big one for a lot of people. I don't think he's coming back. I think that energy role player might be given to Eugene Amarui. He just signed for like a partially guaranteed deal going into next year, like for almost like a $1.5 million or something. But I'm not sure about the numbers, but he did just sign for the rest of the season. And I think it's partially guaranteed going into next year. But what about Hamidou Diallo for you guys?
I think Hami, if you look at his minutes, he could find more somewhere else. I feel like he might just want a new opportunity, and he can get that on a contender. I feel like a contender would want to sign a guy like Hami, And with him, he's been a part of a lot of rebuilds. Why not go and get the bag, maybe get a ring somewhere else? I love Hami, though. Wish him the best.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because I know it's Troy's guy, obviously. You know, he didn't draft him in OKC, and it doesn't do, you know, Hami any favors that he basically gets a guy, you know, on the waiver wire that's from OKC too. I like Hami because he doesn't celebrate with OKC after games, but I think Hami's energy to me, I had to throw that little jab in there. I'm still not over that shit. I think they bring Hami back. I think, to me, his energy is very infectious. Like, I saw Bojan run with Hami. Yeah. I never saw Bojan run in Utah. I never saw Bojan run in Washington. Like, Hami's energy is really infectious, and I think he has a role on this team, but I think it'll be on the bench, in my personal opinion. I think if you want to win, he's a bench piece that you just, you know, maybe it's a sixth, maybe seventh man off the bench.
Okay, I like that take, man. I mean, I'm all for Hami staying in Detroit. I don't know, though, man. It's interesting, though, because, I mean, he still can't shoot. Eugene Amarori still gives you that a little bit, but they both give you enough energy. RJ Hampton, though, he's been popping off lately. Just had a career high recently, I think, with 27. Went off in the third quarter. That was awesome to see. Oh, this is a question. This is a tough one because this team is – I feel like there's already so loaded now it's loaded with a ton of talent in the backcourt outside of Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, but there's a lot of depth. I just don't know where RJ Hampton fits with this team with Alec Burke coming back, and I'm assuming Killian Hayes is going to come back. So I don't see RJ. I would like to see RJ Hampton back, but then again, I'm willing to let this experiment go. What about you guys, Mike? Do you think RJ Hampton's going to come back?
Give him the third two-way slot. I'm for that. I feel like that would be a very Troy Weaver thing to do. We've seen him do projects in the past, and I feel like RJ still has something that can develop. So give him the third two-way, and again, 60 games, and you can send him back whenever you want. I'm fine with that.
Cool. What about you, Anthony?
Yeah, I think RJ's a little bit to me, I think you could play him at either guard spot. Like, obviously, he's kind of like that combo guard, and I kind of like Mike's idea of giving him that third two-way spot because I think if you throw him in the G League, he's going to cook. I mean, he did really well with Lakeland. I think he would do, you know, phenomenal with the Crews. And, you know, if you're short a man, you can call him up. I think that'd be a really good move. But I don't know, man. Like, it's hard to kind of evaluate someone in such a short amount of time. I think there's something there. It's just he just needs more reps, kind of like James Wiseman.
Ooh, we'll see, man. This next name, though, is polarizing in Detroit. Killian Hayes. Is he coming back for – I mean, we just saw, 450 assists and 100 steals. Chauncey Billups, Brandon Jennings, the only two other guys – well, and Grant Hill, he did it as well. But he's in good company, still needs to find his offensive game, still needs to do something consistently on that side. But Killian Hayes, is he going to be a Detroit Piston next year, or do you see them trying to move from him this offseason? Mike, I'll turn it over to you first.
Yes, because I don't think Troy wants to give up on the Killian project yet. I feel like
that's a good point.
What you're going to lose him for is less than what you're going to keep him for in terms of open market value. And I feel like with Detroit, if he wants to stay the course, he understands his role here and he knows what to expect. So I think Killian will stay. And me personally, since he's been here, I've been kind of a Killian Hayes stan, so I am a little biased. But
Okay, that's cool. What about you, Anthony?
I think this is his last chance.
Yeah.
I think this year he's probably developed the most out of his 3 seasons as a pro. But I think the time is ticking. I think they'll give him, you know, one more shot. Next year will probably be a backup point guard role. That's why we were talking about RJ Hampton. I mean, there's a conversation, RJ Hampton or Killian Hayes. I know Killian Hayes is a better defender. RJ's like average, but Killian, I think, you know, just today when I was watching against the Bulls, it's just the mistakes he was making. I think if the Pistons want to win, you can't have that on the floor. You can't have someone try to do the same thing 5 times in a row. He tried to get by Alex Caruso, and Alex Caruso stripped him every damn time. I think there's potential there. It's just if you want to win, you really have to have a conversation of, you know, if he is going to be on the team, he's probably going to be on the bench a lot because he does make a lot of mistakes still.
You can win with growing pains, though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It just depends on how much you want it to affect you. What do you think, Lance?
I do think Killian Hayes is back. I really do. He's a 6'5" guard that has shown, like Anthony said, like this has been the year that he has developed the most. I mean, he had that good string of games a couple months ago where, dude, it looked like he was kind of living up to being a lottery pick a little bit. You know, he looks solid, but it's just, I do think a lot of Killian's issues are more mental than anything. Like, I do think he's a solid basketball player. Like, you can't get to the NBA by luck. Like, it just doesn't happen that way. You have to be good at basketball to get to the NBA. It's just, I think he's one of these dudes that gets in his own head. He misses a shot, he thinks about it. He can't forget quickly. Like, that's an issue for him. But I don't see why it hurts to bring him back. I know a lot of Pistons fans some of them hate to hear that because they're done with Killian. Believe me, I am right there with you guys. I did have a tweet say that he was pulling me back in. I was being sarcastic. I've already tweeted out I would love to have Javion Carter as the backup point guard from Milwaukee. He's a good defender, can shoot the three, just a little undersized at 6'1" compared to Killian. But, you know, I mean, if they do bring Killian back, which I think they will, I want to see them try to play him primarily at the 2 guard where they can take less playmaking pressure off of him and just, you know, have him go into a role that's simpler for him. Just have him play defense and try to knock down shots, man. Just simplify it for him. That's what I want to see. But yeah,
I really like that point. I love that point that you just made, Lance. Make it easier for him, and that I just haven't heard that before, and I don't know. If we're gonna keep Killian, that's the perfect role.
Appreciate that. Corey Joseph, you think we're bringing him back next year? He kind of popped off a little bit too. It was because of him we got that win the other night, hitting some threes from long range. But the Texas Longhorn, they bringing him back. Mike, I'm turning it over to you.
All right, so the legend that was March Kojo, I got the stats right here. 12.5 points, 4 assists on 49.6% from the field and 47.6% from 3. This is a man playing for a contract right here. This is a man who, for many Pistons fans, has been a punchline for the past couple years. This is a man who also provides a lot of veteran leadership and is an older guy on the roster. He's seen some shit, and we need guys who have seen some shit. I want Kojo back, however, as an alternative, if we do not decide to keep him, want to get a little older maybe, just for mentorship. DJ Augustine, who is coming off of 45 from the floor and 43% from three-pointer, Piston legend. I liked DJ when he was here. I'm fine with doing that too.
Oh, dude, I love DJ Augustine. What about you, though, Anthony? You think Corey Joseph's back next year?
If Corey Joseph is back on this team next year, I'm going to have to do a wellness check on everything King. Just because if you're watching, man, I hope he's not back. I don't think he's back on this roster next year. I think the Pistons will go get a veteran. I love the DJ Augustine name drop. I remember when I believe it was Brandon Jennings got hurt. He was just going for 40 bombs because no one could guard him.
Yeah.
I really like Javion Carter, Lance. He's so underpaid, and he was almost a Piston at one point because we almost traded Luke Kennard to the Suns. And he was in that kind of, I think it was him and a French guard. We almost traded Luke Kennard to the Suns, but it never happened. But I think I'd be good on Kojo. I think he's a good vet. It's just I can't stand the dribbling demand. Like if I got to watch him one more season, dribble out a clock and pass it to Cade in the corner with 2 seconds to go, wow, I'm going to snap. I can't watch that anymore.
I ultimately think he leaves. Like I think he's at that point in his career where he's like, man, I did he win a ring with any team? Like was he on San Antonio or like Toronto when they won or
San Antonio 2014, yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just think he leaves. I mean, I just don't think he's going to be getting very many minutes, and I think that's what he wants. You know, I think he still wants to play, and I think but the depth at guard is just going to be too much for him to get a role on next year's team. So I think we're going to say goodbye to Kojo next year. Which thanks for the memories, Kojo. I appreciate it.
Exactly.
Someone said he's going to get a front office job with Casey.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing.
Who just said that? Ryan, bro. Come on.
Shout out to Ryan, man.
Here's my favorite player, Isaiah Livers. The injury concerns are too much. He has not looked like – I feel like because the team is so bad, you're not going to see the best version of Isaiah Livers. He's going to be playing outside of his role, you know, and it's just too much. I mean, he's made a couple good, you know, development, you know, in his game, like that 2-dribble pull-up. That's nice. But he's kind of struggled shooting the outside shot. Defense is kind of lacking. But again, I think if the team is overall better defensively, he's going to be a better defender. But I do think the clock is ticking for Isaiah Livers. I think he has a huge opportunity coming for him next year if he's on the team, which I think they will bring him back because Troy Weaver seems to love this guy. He just needs to stay healthy, needs to find a shot again. But ultimately, I think the Pistons will bring him back. But what about you, Mike? You think Isaiah Livers is coming back?
Easy bring back, especially in a position they need. There's nothing more to be said, really.
All right. What about you, Anthony?
I think he'll be back. It's just I know you kind of hit on it. The injury concerns. It just seems like it's like freak injuries. I know like Jaden Ivey stepped on his foot and like he had to go to the locker room. It's just like if the guy could stay healthy, I think he's one of our better shooters because his shooting form is beautiful to watch. And even though he does get cooked on defense, he's literally guarding the hardest player or the best player on every team. And I think he's just a really good, positive team locker room guy too. I mean, like every interview I see, he's positive, he's smiling, he's having a good time. I still remember what at his presser with Cade and, Koprivica, like, helping, like when they're like, how do you say your last name? Like, he just seems like a really good guy to have on your team. He's just a really positive human being to me. Like, honestly, I love Isaiah Livers.
Yep.
Yeah, I do apologize for everybody listening. I forgot how many guys were on the Pistons this year because it's like 30 names. I apologize. Veteran favorite, Rodney McGruder. Do you think he's coming back? I personally think he's coming back. He doesn't need to play. He's a serviceable guy when he is on the floor. I mean, I just looked his numbers up the other day. He had 112 starts in Miami, which is wild to me. Crazy. But Rodney McGruder, I do think he's going to come back. It seems like everybody loves him on the team. Seems like he's a pro's pro. Again, he can be that 15th man, and he's not going to cry about it. But what about you guys? Mike, Rodney McGruder coming back to Detroit, or do you think he's for another team?
He's at a cheap price, but I think, again, it comes down to what does Rodney want for Rodney. And I don't think these guys are giving up on the rebuild, but they're getting up there in age, and they got to pick what their role is. I think Rodney's going to leave and just find a different role somewhere probably warmer. And that's about it, really.
Okay. What about you, Anthony?
I kind of want him to be here like Udonis Haslem on this team. Just, that vet that's still on the team. Screw you, Klay Thompson. He's still playing. But had to get that out there. I don't know if you guys remember during COVID, he's like, yeah, this guy will be out the league in a couple of years. Still playing, and he's shooting a higher percentage from three than Klay is this year. So, hey. I know it's unless it sounds fun.
Anthony. Come on, man. Hey.
It's ring culture. Honestly.
He's got 4.
I love Rodney, though, man. I do remember bumping into him, like, walking down on Old Woodward, dude. Like, guy is just, like, the most humble guy.
Wait, dude, this was separate occasions. I bumped into the exact same street.
Yeah.
This guy just lives there, I guess. I don't know.
Honestly, man, you just see like this big ass guy. I was like, that's Rodney McGruder. He's like got his hood on, like trying to hide.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. I don't even feel like Rodney McGruder needs to hide. I mean, he's loved in Detroit, though. He is loved in Detroit. This guy, new fan favorite, love his number 97, Eugene Amarui. Like, I mean, we feel like we talk about one. You got to stop. I feel like we talk about one of these guys every year. Tyler Cook, Braxton Key, now Eugene Amarui. I think he's back. I know I said earlier he signed like a 2-year partially guaranteed deal with Detroit. Yeah. I think it's more of just an invitation, come try out. But I think Eugene Amarui will be back with the Detroit Pistons. That does not mean he's going to play significant minutes. I do not think he's going to have a significant role. We're talking like 10th or 11th man, emergency in case one of the bigs go out. But Mike, Eugene Amarui, you think he returns to Detroit?
No, because the last guy we gave this type of contract to, we cut like a week after the season. That's Carson Edwards, and he had a good sample size. So I don't think he's coming back. I think he'll find his way somewhere.
What about you, Anthony? I mean, you already did this, so
yeah. Why are we asking?
Yeah, honestly, like I like Eugene. I like his energy, but like I don't know, man. I'm still kind of salty over the OKC thing. Like I don't care if you do a jersey swap, but motherfucker, like is out there with like doing a pose with all like Jalen Williams and like SGA. I'm like, dude, what the hell are you doing?
Dude, he did kind of look uncomfortable though too in that photo. I wonder if he lost a bet with the team.
I guarantee you, like, if you're on NBA memes, you're a joke. Like, NBA memes posted that, like, the Pistons are so bad, their players are jumping ship.
Oh, I hate that. Oh, my gosh. Okay, well, there's 2 outs. I'm the only one in on Eugene. Again, I still think he's back, but we'll see. Only time will tell. I'm not going to ask about Isaiah Stewart or James Wiseman. I think we all know those guys are going to be back. And Jared Rhoden, he'll probably be on a 2-way deal. Love his hustle and his energy. But again, I don't know. He's 23 years old, and it just seems like, again, there's a lot of depth at guard coming into next year.
There's one player we didn't mention.
Who's that?
Gabriel Procida. Does he make the roster?
Oh, forgot about him. Which, my take on him, though. I feel like when the Pistons – I've said this before. Mike, you can listen to me on this. I say that when the Pistons are in contention, they're going to be like, man, we're missing one piece. And then Gabriel Procida finally signs his deal, comes over, and he jumps off the plane with his national team flag, wearing like a cape here to save the day and being like the Tony Kukoc to the 90s Bulls. That's what I think happens with Gabriel Procida. But I don't think it happens next year. Give it 2 more years and he'll be here.
That's exactly what's going to happen. He's just going to come. Does. Yes. I picture it like he's going to descend from the rafters of LCA wearing his nation's flag in uniform, and that's how he checks in. I'm down for it.
I would if they allowed people like NBA players to do that. That would be amazing. It would be so cool. But we'll never see anything like that. Let's move on to news. So we got one little piece. And this comes from Paul George, of all players, man. Talks about Jalen Duren. What was this? Was this on All the Smoke podcast or
no? So it was actually where I used to work at Wave TV. They actually gave him his own podcast called Podcast P, which love the name. I guess they do a segment every week on his podcast of like players that he wants to kind of give a little bit of shine, and the comp that he had is a player that you have said multiple times on this podcast, Lance.
Yeah, baby Dwight Howard, man. He said it for different reasons, though, just like the strength of the kid. That's what he was saying about Jalen Duren, which I agree with. But I hate the next part of what he was talking about. I hope the Pistons don't stunt his growth. Why did he say that? How many players have the Pistons stunted growth on? And that's like notable. I don't know. I mean, like, are we throwing Stanley Johnson into that conversation? Are we did the Pistons stunt Sekou? Is that what he's saying as well? I don't get why Paul George did that. It kind of feels like Paul George really wants to play with Jalen Duren. And he's basically just saying, hey, man, come over here.
Or he wants to come here.
That could be it, too. But I don't know but what to say about Paul George's comments on Jalen Duren. So what do you guys think about these comments?
Anthony, you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I think Reggie Jackson told Paul George how bad Detroit was, and maybe that's why he had that opinion. Because I don't think a lot of people know Reggie Jackson and Paul George are like best friends. Like they work out together. They live in the same house. It's crazy. So maybe that's where Paul George is kind of coming from. But I could kind of understand where he was coming from it, because before he tweeted that, Jalen Duren was not starting. As soon as that video surfaced on the internet, you saw James Wiseman and Jalen Duren starting. I'm not saying, the Pistons saw it, but I mean, the Pistons even made a freaking graphic about it.
Yeah.
So obviously there's some pressure to, have, Jalen Duren as a starting center. I know we talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago, I should say, about, who should be the starter, but I could see where he's coming from in terms of just like, you don't want to stunt his growth because there's so many big men. He wants to see him flourish because he was so impressed.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Because I was wondering if did Paul George really mean like, because he's not starting right now, that's going to stunt his growth? I mean, I just all thought we were in agreement that we know what Jalen Duren is. Yep. He virtually has played the same way as a starter and off the bench. So, I mean, I don't think it really matters to him where he plays or, whether he starts or not. But I didn't think the starting was that big of a deal. But what you're saying with all the big men, that makes sense. But, Mike, what are your thoughts on it?
I think that we are just looking maybe too much into what he said. I think as Pistons fans, we're very reactionary. And, like, because we haven't had the best development with the org. And I think with PG, he was just saying, you have a muscular kid. He's 19 years old, and you can't screw that up. He's the guy who played with prime Roy Hibbert. He's the guy who played on a team that had a big man that was really feared in his time, locking guys up. Built the same, not as athletic, but I think that what you're saying, Lance, minutes are minutes, and as long as the minutes distribution is good or they're starting in tandem, I'm fine with it. I love that he was able to say that because NBA players don't owe each other anything, and you have to at least recognize a guy's game to be able to say that and echo the organization and the fan sentiments too.
Man, I hope Jalen Duren just reads that and he's like, man, I'm glad that he's proud of me, but what did he mean about stunt my growth? And he just goes off on the Clippers next year. That's what I want to see. That'd just be incredible. I don't think Detroit's going to stunt his growth at all, though. Yeah. I think Jalen Duren, he's one of those guys, one of those players that no matter what situation you put him into, and I mean, like, he could have been playing for the Clippers back in the day when whoever that old owner was, back in the day, Donald Sterling or something, and still would have thrived on a team like that. I think Jalen Duren is that good, good enough worker. He's just going to find a way to be a star in this league no matter what. So I'm not worried about it. And Paul George, man, just thank you for – just don't say that next time you're talking about one of our guys. This is a fun topic for me, and it's who do you want running the show next year, Cade Cunningham or Jaden Ivey? I had tweeted out that I can't wait to see Jaden Ivey play off of Cade Cunningham, and I had someone comment like, dude, you should edit this, but I'm too cheap to edit on Twitter, so I will not. But what about you guys? Who do you want running the show as point guard? Now, I know it's positionless basketball. You need like multiple ball handlers on the floor, but I'm looking at it as like a 60-40 split. Who's the 60? Who's the 40 in running the show next year?
I feel like it's going to be Cade because he's the point guard. It is, it's been christened to be his team, but also when Cade comes off the floor, you can keep Ivy on and vice versa. And you get into what the Warriors do, even though Clay's more of an off-ball guy, different type of offense, different set of plays, different threat of player you have to adjust to. And that's what's going to really make them deadly is, yes, it's going to be Cade's team, quote unquote, but you're going to have two different brands of basketball you can play when either one of them decides to get a break.
What about you, Anthony? Who runs the show?
It's just tough. It's really tough. I know I got a lot of hate for it when Jaden Ivey got drafted. I told you I see him more as a point guard, right?
Okay.
Everyone's saying, he's a shooting guard. Even Jaden said he's a shooting guard. But I think what we saw is he really flourished as a lead guard. He flourished as a guy that, ran the show. But you also have Cade Cunningham, who's just as good as passer as Jaden Ivey. This is tough for me, but I think I'm going to agree with Mike. I think it's going to be Cade. But I think you're going to see a lot more off-ball movement from Jaden Ivey. I'm not going to say he's going to be like a Reggie Miller or Richard Hamilton. But if you go back and watch some of his Purdue tape, he was running off screens exclusively, and we did not see any of that this season. If that's in his package and that's in his game, I think I would rather have Cade be the point guard and Jaden be the shooting guard just because, obviously you got two guys that can score 20, give you 7 assists a night. But I think I feel more comfortable with the ball in Cade Cunningham's hands.
No, I agree with both of you. I think Cade's running the show. I think both of their games mesh together, but the improvement as a spot-up shooter from Jaden Ivey, it makes more sense for Cade to kick out to him than Jaden Ivey to drive and kick out to Cade because Cade has not shown the consistency to shoot at a high percentage from three-point land. Like, we just don't see it from him yet. But also, I feel like even though Jaden Ivey has made strides as a lead guard in Detroit, I mean, he's looked great. I still think he forces the issue a little too much, and I think some of it's a little rough. It almost reminds me of Russell Westbrook. Like, yeah, he's going to, like, even though Jaden Ivey was averaging 7 assists, I believe, I forget what month it was, like some little stretch right there, I felt like 4 to 5 of those assists were within the flow of the offense, and the other couple of assists were just forced. Like, I have the ball, I'm going to make a play, even though it's not pretty, I'm still going to get it to my guy. And also, I just think with Cade playing and Jaden Ivey playing off of him, since he developed as a spot-up shooter, now teams are afraid of that skill set. So he has the athleticism to beat guys to the rim and beat guys at the rim, whether it's going up, over them, or through them. Jaden Ivey has that ability and land at the free throw line. I just think his game is so much better playing off of Cade because he's just a much better athlete, and he's a north and south runner. Like, that's his strength, like just going downhill. And Cade is just slow, methodical, kind of like Chris Paul a little bit, where, even though he may not be the athlete, the gravity, the defenses are always paying attention to Cade. I just feel like they weren't really doing that with Jaden Ivey when he was running the show.
And you brought up a great point, Lance, too. Now that you have a spot up, the spot up shooting that we can see from him, you're getting a guy who Cade can run say they just run a set play. They come out, Jaden can get kicked open too in the corner, but that could set up a second play, which could come off a third play, which could come off a fourth. You can't defend that after a while. You're going to break teams down. The Celtics do it. The Warriors do it. All the elite teams are able to do that. Even the Nuggets do some sort of a way of it with Jamal Murray and Jokic, even though they're two completely different positions. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah, and man, it's just like I feel like Jaden Ivey, like Cade Cunningham's playmaking ability is like it's like a savant of basketball. It does remind me of Chris Paul. It's just like it's slow, methodical, but like he sees 2 steps ahead of everybody else. And with Jaden Ivey, that playmaking ability is more secondary. Like he's more of a scorer. He's more of a guy looking for his shot and getting to the rim and just trying to attack and just go through people. Like that's what I love about his game. So, I mean, like he is a good playmaker, but I just think it's a secondary skill from him. And plus, what I want to see from Jaden Ivey, and maybe you guys can agree with me or not, I want to see him be an elite 2-way player, which I think he can be. But if he's running the show and expending that energy, we're not going to get that defensive player, that defense ability from him game in and game out. And I think Jaden Ivey is way more valuable as an elite 2-way player than just an elite guard for the Pistons.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit all the, like, I think when you look at Jaden Ivey, I think, to your point, he could be a spot-up shooter. And then you got Bojan on the wing. And whoever you draft to, wherever you go. But I think to your point, Lance, I think I'd rather see Ivey at the 2.
Cool. I'm glad we're in agreement on that. That's a fun topic. I've been thinking about that for like 2 weeks, by the way, because I love talking about that stuff, man. I'm glad I can't 140 characters on Twitter, whatever it is not enough for me to get my thoughts out. Thank God for this podcast.
Speaking out our topics, man. Damn.
Yeah.
I apologize for that. But who would you rather start a franchise with right now, Cade Cunningham or Paolo Banchero? This is a fun topic as well. Shout out to Anthony for writing this one down, man. I'm taking Cade Cunningham. I know he's been hurt. It's just, I don't know, man. Like finding guys like him, I think is just so much more difficult. Even though Paolo Banchero has been amazing, I think he's going to be an elite player. I just think he's too one-dimensional, and he's going to need he still needs a playmaker around him to set him up. Even though he can create his own shot, I just feel like he needs a more of a playmaker around him to get the best of his abilities. But that's just me. What are you guys' thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. If we're going strictly off of buffs counter, Cade 1, Paolo 0, got the advantage there already. But I really like starting a franchise with Cade, who, like you said, he can make the guys around him and set up a system around himself, whereas I feel like Paolo has to have the system around him. If I'm making sense of what I'm saying, Cade can be a part of a greater thing, whereas Paolo has to be the centerpiece, has to be the focus, and you have to build around that. Because Paolo, amazing player, but he's a unique player. He's a unicorn in what he can do, and you got to build around that properly. What about you, Anthony?
I think there are 2 players that you can build around now. I think Cade, to me, is way more versatile than Paolo. I think Cade arguably can play 4 positions. And the thing with Cade that I love the most about him is he makes others around him better. Not saying that Paolo can't do that, but when I look at Paolo, I see a lot of Blake Griffin. I see a guy that is going to be a dominant power forward for probably the next 10 years. I think his passing is kind of underrated. His 3-point shot is obviously still a work in progress. I know we were talking about Rookie of the Month last month, and he shot like 1%. We're wondering why he won Rookie of the Month over Jaden Ivey. But I think I would rather build around Cade just because I've kind of seen the body of work. I've seen him, develop a mid-range shot. Obviously, the 3-point shot isn't there right now, but it's, obviously, playing with one healthy leg will do that to you. But for me, I'm building around Cade long term.
I also feel like, too, with Cade, like he can do so many things to help a team win that he doesn't need to score 20 points per game for him to get the win or for him to feel satisfied. And like he can still make an impact without scoring the ball, whether it's playing defense, setting another guy up, whatever you want him to do, he can do. But I feel like with Paolo Banchero, and I have not watched enough Magic games, so do not crucify me. at all. Do not do that. But what I'm saying is with Paolo, it's like he needs to have the ball and he needs to score for you to feel his impact on the game. He's not that same type of player as Cade Cunningham where he doesn't need to. Like I said, I keep making that Chris Paul comparison throughout this podcast. It's just Chris Paul doesn't need to score 25 a night to, feel his impact on the game. There's just he brings something extra, and I feel like Cade does as well. So that's why I'll take him as the franchise player.
And when he came out of OK State, too, we as fans were getting upset with Cade almost for setting up his team too much and looking for his teammates too much instead of realizing that he was the superstar. And I love that mentality that he has. And like you said, it's very interesting what he can do when you put anybody really around him. He can elevate them.
Yeah, I remember his cousin, his cousin Ashton. They did a thing with Whistle Sports. And he said, Cade reminds me of LeBron James and the standpoint of where he's looking to get everyone around him set up. He's looking to get everyone comfortable in the offense. And then when it's kill time, he'll attack.
Yes.
And I always think about in the back of my mind, I still watched that Whistle interview before Cade was even drafted. And I just the more I watch Cade, I kind of see that. Like, he's got that kind of like that DeMar DeRozan mid-range down. We saw it this season. He can get to the basket. He can finish with either hand. Like, I like Paolo, but I think Cade long-term is kind of like a rare breed of a point forward.
I also think with like Cade, you'll see like games where like he'll have like 4 points in the fourth quarter, 6 points in the second, 4 points in the third, but then just go off in the fourth and win the game. Like but also just affecting the game from every other facet that he possibly can in those other quarters until it comes down to the crunch time. Like, I'm just so excited to have him back. It's going to be such a fun year next year with him in the backcourt again. So, let's move on to this 5 head coaches topic, man. It's going to be interesting. If you had to pick one out of this list, who you taking to coach the Detroit Pistons? The list is Mark Jackson, Ime Udoka, Kenny Atkinson, Jerry Stackhouse, Sam Cassell. I think we got out of 6 though. Chris Quinn from Miami. He's been reported to a little bit. But out of those names, Mike, who would you want to be the coach of the Pistons next year?
Okay. If I'm going straight off of how I'm feeling, it's Stack. And the reason I feel with Stack is he's young into his career. He is moldable to the point where you have John Beilein, you have Dwane Casey, and you have Troy Weaver, who has coaching experience. All 3 of those guys can get him together and really do it. 2017 G League Coach of the Year for Toronto. Again, another Casey guy. Every year in Vanderbilt right now, his schedule has gotten harder and his roster has gotten better. I know a guy who played for Vandy under Coach Stack, and he loves Coach Stack. He is a player's guy, but he also is one of those guys who can really get them together, get the respect. And there's not that immaturity you see with coaches in terms of the decision-making. They're very confident in him. And again, I like the concept of bringing old players back. If not Stack, I want to see Sheed as an assistant. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, those Sheed videos are pretty awesome right now, popping off on social media, man. They're great, dude. You don't want to be a shotter, you want to be a shooter. I love it, man. It's awesome. But what about you, Anthony? Who are you taking?
I've been on the Stackhouse train for a very long time. I think there's going to be a conversation with Stack, but my gut tells me Gores is going after that big fish. He's going after the name. Like, we see all these assistants that, they're trying to, climb up to the NBA ranks as a head coach. But I mean, Tom Gores fired Maurice Cheeks because he thought he could get Tom Izzo. He thought there was a shot that he could get Tom Izzo way back then. He hired Van Gundy because Van Gundy was a name. I think out of this list, I think he's going to go after Udoka just because the success he had with the Boston Celtics, being a Spurs assistant under Greg Popovich, which, in my opinion, one of the greatest coaches of all time. I know there's some off the court stuff, but I've seen some Pistons fans like, hey, man, just get them a bunch of secretaries and keep them happy. Like, that's what I've seen with some Pistons. It's like they don't care. They're like, hey, man, hey, man, I'll let him sleep with my wife. That's what I've seen some Pistons.
Wow.
That's how down bad they are. I'm not to that point.
Gosh.
But, hey, man, I had to bring some entertainment to this podcast.
Wow.
But I think Udoka to me would probably be the choice. Obviously, Jerry Stackhouse winning. I think he won Coco to the year in the SEC with Vandy this year. And to Mike's point, you know, he won a G League championship, and he's a former, you know, Dwane Casey guy. I mean, him and Dwane Casey were communicating when Dwane Casey was in Toronto, his last year there. I think, you know, Stackhouse being around the team more kind of is like a red flag. If you're a Pistons fan, you're like, okay, what the hell's going on? You haven't been around the team in over 20 years. All of a sudden, you're around the team more. I think he's a really good X's and O coach, Jerry Stackhouse is. That's why I've been so high on him. I think he'll bring accountability too. You've seen him, you know, yell at players, yell at coaches. He doesn't care. He'll get in your face. And I think you'd probably get the most out of your players if you did hire Jerry Stackhouse. But I know most Pistons fans, they want that Mark Jackson name, that they want that Udoka name. They want that big, sexy name. But I really don't know what Troy Weaver's going to do. But if I had to pick it, it's probably going to be Udoka.
Jerry Stackhouse has gotten a few guys to the NBA, Saban Lee and Scottie Pippen Jr. You know, I mean, there's a development with him too as well. I'm going to eliminate two names off this list because I don't think they're going to be head coaches in Detroit. Mark Jackson, he was a good defensive coach in Golden State. They were 30th though in passes per game, and he was trying to run post-ups for Jermaine O'Neal. Like, I mean, come on, that's just crazy. He's just an old school coach. I don't see it happening. I think that window has closed for him. And Sam Cassell, I'm going to eliminate his name just because he's had a bunch of interviews to become a head coach. I think that Houston, I think he might be the head coach of the Houston Rockets. Like, that kind of makes sense to me just because he's familiar with that organization. And I think Sam Cassell really deserves it. I just don't think it happens in Detroit. I think I don't really see the Pistons going with a rookie head coach. Like, I like the name Chris Quinn. I mentioned him, and I saw some reports with him. I would love for him to bring Heat culture, but I do think we're going to get a guy with some experience coming in. And I think it's either going to be Ime Udoka or Kenny Atkinson, two guys that I think have developed great relationships with players. Like, they seem like players coaches. Kenny Atkinson, though, great development guy. He was turning G League dudes into serviceable role players with the Brooklyn Nets. The only problem with him as a coach is he's not the best at X's and O's and like inbound situations. So, and we've already had a lot of complaints with Dwane Casey on that regard. So, but I do think Kenny Atkinson is a fantastic coach. I just don't think he's had enough time with organizations to really do his thing. But then Ime Udoka, very good guy as well, very good player. Another one of those dudes that gets in, has great relationships with players. You know, I mean, a lot of guys in Boston loved him. But the thing that he has over all these other guys on this name, he understands situations and he's good at adapting to those situations. So I'm all in on Ime Udoka becoming the head coach for the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah. I feel it. Sorry, go ahead, Lance.
Oh, I was just going to say, no, go ahead.
Well, okay. I probably prevented something there. Kenny Atkinson, I feel like I'm fine with him if these fall through, because again, the amount of head coaches we have in the front office, I feel like the X's and O's can be fixed by committee. And if you're going to take that approach, especially with Atkinson, I liked those Nets teams he had where they should not. Well, Kenny Atkinson is the reason that Brooklyn had to implode their roster for a big three, because they realized the talent they had under Atkinson was a lot better than they thought. And he was able to elevate them to the point where they were like, okay, we have a championship window now. So that's why I would like Atkinson. But again, I think Stack's the way to go, but we'll see.
No, I like Stackhouse too, because I feel like that's a guy, again, you know, he knows what it's like to be an NBA player.
Yeah.
From what I've read and heard, it seems like his guys at Vanderbilt do like playing for him. And plus, I feel like he'd be a good X's and O's guys because he was in the NBA. He's seen those situations firsthand. And I'm sure as a player, when you're in those situations, you're probably already thinking, oh man, if I could draw this play, if this is what I would do. So he's probably always been thinking about that, even as a player. But yeah, I'm all in on Jerry Stackhouse. I think he would be great. I just think they're going to try to sign a guy that's had some experience as a head coach in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, like all those guys. I can't believe I said all those gays. All those guys' names. I apologize for that. Like I said, they're all assistants. You know, like I think you said Charles Lee. The Heat assistant. Like I'm okay with giving an assistant coach a shot, but I think the expectation should be lower then. You know. a lot of Pistons fans are assuming we're a playing team next year. And I just don't see us shooting from like 16 to 40 wins. I think that would be, you would have to basically strip the roster down and just, go after, guys like Chris Middleton to try to like make that happen. Right. I don't see that happening, but I think the big names out there are obviously Udoka, obviously Kenny Atkinson. I love Kenny Atkinson, but to Mike's point, he's 100% correct. Like Brooklyn didn't know what they had in Jared Allen or Karis LeVert, and then they found out that these guys were valuable, and they got a lot of assets for it, and they got Kyrie and Kevin Durant out of it, right? Mm-hmm. You don't want a placeholder. You don't want someone to say, okay, get us to the playoffs, and then we can't get out of the first round. It's been since 2008 since we've won a playoff game. Yeah, and we're in 2023. If we're going after a head coach, it's probably going to be a guy that's going to be here for the next 5 seasons. It's going to be a guy that they expect to get out of the first round and actually win a playoff series. And I just don't know if any of these, assistant coaches can do that. That's why I think when you saw Sham's report, he said Charles Lee and Udoka were on the Pistons' radar as like potential guys to get hired.
Anthony, to counter your point, remember back in 2014, this great time we were in, the Pistons were deciding between a very experienced NBA head coach with finals experience or a TV analyst. That TV analyst's name was Steve Kerr. So we have to also be careful how we talk about coaching experience versus, like, I was being more sorry. I wasn't trying to be condescending with the way I said that, but like I hope it didn't sound bad, but we have to understand that like if he's an assistant, he could still be a great coach. He doesn't have the opportunity yet. Yeah. And with us, we picked the big name head coach before. And I get it. SVG was an anomaly. He told Tom Gores that he wanted to make Andre Drummond Dwight Howard. And that was kind of what sold the whole thing. But we also have to remember we can use an assistant and develop them in the system that we want because, yes, it's a 5-year plan, but that 5-year plan also includes developing a coach if you wanted to.
Yeah. I just don't know where the franchise is at in terms of like where they want to be. Like to your point, you're 100% correct. Like you could develop like let's use Charles Lee as an example because he's a guy that a lot of people think that it's going to get the job. You could use him as an example, and you still have Rashard Lewis on the bench, who was a really good NBA player. You have John Beilein, who to me I think is one of the best development coaches in the NBA. John Beilein's a phenomenal coach. He shouldn't have left Michigan, in my opinion. There's a lot of great assistants on this roster. I just don't know where Tom Gores is at either. He may be sick of losing. They've won 80 games in what, four seasons? He probably wants to get back to the playoffs. He's probably itching for the playoffs. So that's where I'm kind of like, he probably wants a big fish. He wants a big name. He's always gone for the big name.
Of course.
So I kind of question a lot of these assistants on this list. This list seems more of a Troy Weaver list than a Tom Gores list. Because Troy Weaver could say, these are the guys I'm going to go after. Yeah. And Tom Gores is like, well, who's that? What has he done?
Yeah.
So that's the way I'm thinking. Just since Tom Gores has bought the team, like when he bought the team, he fired Rasheed Wallace. He fired all those guys. So I'd be really surprised if Troy Weaver, or I shouldn't say Troy Weaver, Tom Gores signs off on an assistant that he doesn't really know.
I also do feel like Tom, though. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Lance.
No, you're good. You're good.
I feel like Tom, though, has taken a lot less of a back seat to this because I think he realized, like, I need to find somebody who can really manage basketball. Tom Gores is a great businessman. Although basketball-wise, he knows that he needs people around him for that. And I feel like he's going to let Troy be a lot more lenient with hiring because if that wasn't the case, I'm pretty sure Blake and Andre might still be here. Like, and that's no slight. I'm just thinking about it that way right now.
Yeah, no, and that's what I was actually going to ask. Like, do you think that Troy Weaver is actually going to get 100% control in who he wants to be the coach of this team, or does Tom Gores kind of step in and say, no, I still got an input on this? Like, because I always felt like that with Tom Gores. Like, I felt like he's the type of owner, if he wants someone or wants something, no matter what, he's just going to go out and get it. And he's just going to bypass the plan of what Troy Weaver has. But it seems like, though, what you were saying, Mike, he has taken a backseat to Troy Weaver. And I hope that's the case. I hope Tom Gores doesn't ultimately make the final decision on who the head coach is in Detroit. I hope he leaves it up to Troy Weaver.
Yeah, that's my only concern. Like, I think your point, Mike, was 100% correct. Like, you could develop an assistant coach, but like we've seen Tom Gores, like nobody saw the Blake Griffin trade coming. We were shocked. Tom Gores probably figured out that he was available. They're like, hey, he's available. Let's go get him. That's my fear as a Piston fan is he sees a big name like a Udoka saying, Udoka's available. Let's go get him. Udoka could flop here because we don't have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Like he could completely just flop as a coach. Like you never know. But that's just my fear as a Piston fan. Maybe I'm overreacting. That's just kind of been his track record since he's, bought the team is he always goes after these big name head coaches because he thinks that's how he's going to win a championship.
Yeah, I wish I knew a little bit more about some of these assistants that are listed to really give a great input. I mean, I know a little bit more about Kenny Atkinson and Ime Udoka because they have a history as a head coach, and there's been discussion about them. So there has been conversation around it. So you have more of an understanding of how they're going to coach this team. But yeah, I would be all in. Like what we were talking about earlier in the podcast. Like I 100% trust Troy Weaver to make the decision. Like if he wants to bring in Charles Lee. Dude, I think that might be. Then I have to agree with Troy. That's the best That's the best candidate for the job. But I'm going to say that Ime Udoka is the coach, man. That's how. That's just it. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Chuck Daly was kind of like a failure in Cleveland.
Yeah,
and he's the best Detroit Pistons coach of all time. Won 2 championships, and I think he has close to 500 wins as a coach with the Pistons.
Bill Belichick too. If you want to go NFL, failure with the Browns. It's about system and it's about people giving you that trust system, and I feel like it's different.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if Gores is going to just kind of get out the way and let Troy cook, I'm okay with it. But just, hey, man, I've just seen how he is. He wants a big name. It's just like, hey, J.R. Smith's available. Let's go get him. Like, it's just like, come on, man. Like, just let Troy do his thing.
I would have loved J.R. Smith in Detroit for like a season. That would have been amazing.
He might come out of retirement now that he can smoke weed.
Dude, he's having a nice little golf career though, man, and he's in academic high honors. It's pretty cool making the dean's list, man. You don't want to give that up. Go play basketball. Come on. So stupid. Pistons Talk Player of the Win. We finally have one. The Detroit Pistons beat the Indiana Pacers 122-115. So on this, every time the Pistons win, we've only got to do 17 of these all year. This is the 17th one. We picked the player that we think was player of the game. I don't know if you guys got the stats pulled up right now, but I'll go first. I'm going to go ahead and give it to Killian Hayes, man. Like, he's been shit on this entire year, pretty much since he's been drafted. I don't think there's ever been a Pistons win where we could have actually picked him to be the player of the game. So I'm going to give it to him. 28 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, and I think he had like 4 steals in that game as well. Dude, just turned it on both sides and just played phenomenally in that game. But, Mike, who's your Pistons Talk Player of the Win?
Definitely Ivy, just in the Ivy Matt Duren debate, ending the question any of us had with a phenomenal performance, especially in front of his mom, getting to do that too. Special moment. So shout out to Jaden, although I do want to give it to Kill. He eliminated my FOMO, so I love that game for him.
Yeah, Jaden Ivey had a hell of a game. And George Blaha called the windmill. Maybe we should give it to George Blaha.
When I saw that, because I saw the highlight, I was like, please call windmill. I was like, oh my God, he did it. Like, if he would have said Tomahawk Jam, this phone would be broken.
There was someone that had tweeted out there, like, we got to stop bashing George Blaha for this. Probably from his angle, everything looks like a windmill. And I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe. Courtside seats, maybe everything looks like a windmill. But no, George is not off the hook. He calls it wrong every time. Anthony, who's your Pistons Talk Player of the Win?
I got to give it to Ivy. Dropping 29 points. It's like 29 points, 5 rebounds, and 9 assists. That's a hell of a game. Killian, obviously, 28 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists. I got to give it to Ivy, though, just because the fact that I think he had a streak in the NBA where he had like 10 plus games, and it was like 35 games where he scored 10 points consecutively. And he led the NBA for rookies in that. So I got to give it to Ivy. Just had a really good second half of the season. Really happy that we actually got a win and we didn't have the worst record in franchise history.
Dude, it's crazy. We talked about that like a month ago if they were going to get another win, and we were like, they might get one more. And they had 15 wins at the time. They got 2. It was crazy. But we talked about that a month ago. There's like 15 games left. It's fucking nuts. Do we have any Q&A questions?
You know what? This whole chat has just been coaches.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like literally I would have to scroll up. I'm not even shitting you. Like some of the comments, like I'm not even gonna read because I made this podcast way too unprofessional. I do apologize for that. I'm a little tired. But yeah, I'm not reading that comment, Bravo. What the hell? Oh, give me dope and cheerleader. You crazy, bro. No, we don't really have any Q&A questions, but if you guys do want to ask any of your questions, we'll answer a couple. Mike, if you're okay, being on.
Oh, no, dude, I'm having the time of my life right now, man. This has been great, so I'm down, yeah.
Do you guys think Jaden Ivey's all-rookie first team this year? Do you think he's done enough late in the season to actually get that? Or do you think it still goes to Benedict Mathurin? I think he's first team, man. I think he's done enough. And if they don't give him first team, that is just bullshit. That is bullshit.
It's especially because you could make the argument like, oh, it's a losing team. But it's not like he was stat padding. This was almost identical volume to what everyone else was getting. So he's been doing what he's been doing on the same numbers as everyone else with injuries, trades, all that stuff. So if they don't, I won't be surprised, but I'm going to be mad.
I'm going to definitely be mad.
Yeah, I think he might get kind of like the second team, and we're all gonna like go up in arms. Like Detroit versus everybody. This is bullshit. Like I can just see it. Like how are you gonna? They'll probably have like Walker Kessler over Jalen Duren, and just like even though Walker Kessler was a beast.
No, Walker Kessler he's a problem. I love Walker Kessler.
Yeah, he was my guy. If like the Pistons didn't get Duren,
get
Walker Kessler.
I made a video, I believe, when they traded him to Utah, and I was like, no one is talking about Walker Kessler's game. Like the guy, and it worked. So I was pleasantly surprised by Walker Kessler.
Dude, what if Mark Williams gets a rookie team over Jalen Duren? He's averaging 9.7 rebounds, almost a steal, and a block per game, shooting 63% from 2-point. Oh, from the field, yeah.
I don't think that'll happen. He was injured all year. And he didn't play until like the second half of the season.
Yeah, but it would be a very NBA thing to do to Detroit.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Mike, I do got a question. I got to ask you because what did you tweet that I got your account banned on Twitter? I don't remember. I remember I retweeted it.
Oh, I tweeted something that was like the Pistons have signed. I forget who I said the Pistons had signed, but we didn't sign the person. And then I got banned.
I felt so bad. He was like, bro, my account got banned. I was like, dude, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. I was messing around. It looks like there is some questions, though.
Yeah, we do have a couple. We got some from Bravo. No more cheerleader questions, thank God. What do you guys think if we draft and trade Scoot for another young or an all-star player?
Dude, it would be great. Again, like we've talked about this before. I don't know who's the star player, who's the young all-star player that is available right now for the number 2 overall pick. I mean, I know we hear Jaylen Brown. Like there are just rumors though that he wants out of Boston. That's not confirmed. I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to think. Just right now on the top of my head, if there are any young players that want to be moved that want to play in Detroit. I don't know. I just don't see it happening.
I agree too, especially because when you think about where was I going with this? You have the Celtics are going to have to give up more than just Jaylen Brown for this because the salaries have to match. So you're not only giving up Jalen, you're giving up a Robert Williams, Peyton Pritchard, someone where the salary is at least comparable. Say you're the Miami Heat. You have no one to trade. You're going to have to sell out all your draft picks, trade Lowry, trade Hero. All the teams that are in a position to trade can't trade too much. Like the NBA is in a weird gridlock right now. So the trade market this offseason is going to be nuts.
It's going to be crazy. It really
like
is.
I said, I think there's going to be a couple of star players this summer. It seems like every free agency is absolutely crazy. Like I did not see Kevin Durant getting moved. I just didn't see that happening.
No.
It's going to be really interesting to see how these playoffs do, pan out. Maybe the Suns get swept in the first round. I'm hoping because I want Devin Booker in Detroit. That's just me. I'm a sicko. But I don't know, bro. I don't really know like what team would want the number 2 pick and Scoot. I mean, like, I don't really think there's any team in the lottery that like wants a Scoot Henderson. I don't think a championship team like the Bucks want to Scoot Henderson because they have Drew Holiday. Like, I can't really think of a team right now that would want a Scoot Henderson on their team.
I'm trying to look.
Bravo Mo said he wants RJ Barrett if the Knicks want Scoot. And no, with the RJ Barrett contract, I like RJ a lot, but his athleticism at least, but that contract and what the Knicks are going to have to, I want quickly too if that's happening.
Yeah,
and they're not going to give him up.
I'm looking at like a Western Conference team like the Pelicans. Like, I mean, could they give up Brandon Ingram for the number 2 overall pick? Probably not likely, but unless they believe that Zion Williamson's going to be healthy, and they're like, well, he's a running mate.
He's never going to be healthy in New Orleans.
I don't think so.
No, it's too much gumbo down there, man. Like, straight up, like you're just eating good down there all the damn time.
Dude, it's so funny because I have a friend. He's a tall dude. He's like 6'9", but he told me when he goes down south, because they do like some conventions in New Orleans, he eats really well when he's down there, dude. He's like, the food is just fucking amazing. He's like, I would be huge if I lived down there. So yeah, you're right, Anthony. The food is good.
I know. I have a buddy that was a Marine, and he said when he retired from the Marines, he said, I'm not even shitting you, dude. I gained 100 pounds in 3 months. Because everything is just butter. Everything's just fattening. And I was just like, yeah, it's like if you look at Zion when he got out of high school, like he was actually kind of like ripped. And he goes to New Orleans and he looks like he should be playing tight end for the Lions because he's just so damn big. Like, I know he could lose the weight if he was like in LA or something like that, but I don't know.
What about this one? What about the Wizards giving up Bradley Beal for the number 2 overall pick? And obviously some other things going on in there. Because I mean, they're always talking about blowing it up.
That's 50 mil right there. I have a whole theory on this. I have a whole theory on the Wizards, though. And my theory is they are mid on purpose. Because you can make money and sell tickets being mid with an all-star. And I believe that's what they're doing.
Oh, yeah. Being in basketball purgatory pays the bills, man. Keeps the lights on.
That's all I'm saying. And their owner owns the Capitals, and they're a very good hockey team, so they don't have to worry about it.
Oh, they just got eliminated, though. From the playoffs.
They just won a Stanley Cup recently, though. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I know.
They got Ovi.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's funny you say that because, like, I was saying, we're talking about draft stuff, and I was just like, the Wizards draft for fit every year. They don't draft best player available. They're always drafting for fit. I was just like, yeah.
It's always a very specific fit, too. It's not like 3 and D. It's like, we just want D. And then the next year, we're going to get 3. Yeah. And then the next year, we're going to get a big. It's like, it's such an interesting thing they have going on there.
Yeah, that's why I have there's like a list of NBA teams where I know they'll never win an NBA championship. Like in Washington, Minnesota, those are 2 of them at the very top. Like, I don't know what they're ever doing, but they're never going to win one. The Hornets, yeah, that's a good one too.
They'll probably switch to the Bobcats before they win the championship.
They'll probably go with another name other than that too. The Bobcats, so that's such a weird name for the NBA too. Just so strange.
This is a player we've talked about, Lance. So I want to hear your thoughts on it, Mike. Would y'all add Cam Johnson in free agency?
Oh, yeah, of course. You've heard me say that before.
I like Cam, but I also like Seth Curry on the Nets too. I feel like if you could add him, I'd like that a lot. But Cam gives you that more of a two-way. But if we're going strictly off of 3-point shooting, I want Seth over Cam.
Man, it's hard to pass up a 6'10", 3-and-D, right?
Oh, God.
I mean, you could realistically draft Brandon Miller and sign Cam Johnson in free agency, and then there's your 3-point problems. That now you have perimeter shooters to surround Cade and Ivy.
And they both play together on the floor.
I forgot about Bojan. Shit. Like, we may be giving up 120, but we're going to splash 140 on you.
And you know, screw it, guys. We're running a guy to 6 right now. Don't ask how we're doing it. There's 6 guys on the floor. We need 4 shooters.
Yeah, man, I'm still just looking through these teams to trade the number 2 overall pick too for a star. And dude, Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards.
No. There's no way they do that. Ant is their guy.
I know, but I feel like he's going to eventually leave because, again, it's Minnesota. They don't know how to keep their stars. Starting with Kevin Garnett, then Kevin Love, and now Anthony Edwards. He's on the short list of guys that are legit franchise dudes that just for some reason Minnesota can't make it work.
What's that, Mike?
They'd move Cat before they moved Ant.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Easy.
All right, here's a really good question from Ryan. I don't even think we've talked about this, Lance. Are you afraid we're limiting Stewart's role by essentially having him fight for the backup 4 spot? Prior to Wiseman, I always envisioned him as a long-term backup 5. It allows different schemes.
No, because I think Isaiah Stewart's versatility on defense and on offense, surprisingly, is valuable that he can play the 4 or the 5 really on this team. I don't think it hurts him at all because, again, he's kind of like he's not as – the potential's not there like Duren, but in the same sense that it doesn't matter whether they start or come off the bench. They're going to give it their all no matter what. So I'm not worried about Isaiah Stewart in his role. No. You know, I think he's going to be here for a long time. I don't think he's going to be a starter here for a long time, but I do think he's going to have a role here for a long time. And I don't worry about him, man. His versatility defensively and offensively is going to keep him here, man, and keep him getting minutes.
Yeah, I think he's going to be – I think if we want this 2 big lineup to work, you need Isaiah Stewart at the 4 versus the 5 just to stretch the floor because we're going to get into the territory of the Josh Smith, Greg Monroe, and Andre Drummond spacing era, and we never want to hit that again. That was like horrendous spacing. And like when I see like, you know, James Wiseman and Jalen Duren out there, I was like, dude, neither of them can shoot.
Yeah.
Like not like they can hit a 3-pointer once in a while, but it's not like a league average. It's not like Isaiah Stewart shooting. Like I think he shot close to 34% from 3 this year. So I think long-term he'll be either your starting 4 or a backup 4 at the very least.
I've never seen him as the backup 5 on this team. I've always seen him as that flex hybrid position, just given his skill set and his mentality. Like you need a guy who is going to go out there and throw an elbow. You need a guy who's going to be the tough guy if he needs to. And again, Stu is too valuable to lose. And again, you don't need him at the 5 because again, he's undersized and you don't want to play him there that much.
Yeah, someone said Aaron Gordon would be amazing on this team at the 4.
I'm not a fan.
But for the number 2 pick, though, because I'm still in that.
Yeah, like I told you, I had a dream that the Nuggets traded for Luka Doncic this summer. They traded like Jamal Murray, like just a shitload of picks because they got bounced out of the first round, and it was just like Luka and Jokic, and I was just like, I could see that happening too. By the way.
That'd just be crazy. That would be crazy. Oh, my God. Yeah, they're on the – I mean, who was it? Tim McMahon said that he could see, like, Luka Doncic requesting a trade next season if they're not competitive or something.
I mean, Jason Kidd's like, when they hired Jason Kidd, I knew that roster was going to be fucked. He's just a locker room cancer. He's not a good coach.
Still gets opportunities, though, for some reason. It's crazy.
It's – like I said, if he didn't have Giannis in Milwaukee, they'd probably be a lottery team still. Like straight up. Like it's crazy. Ooh, scoop for Pascal Siakam.
No. How old is Pascal though at this point? He's been in the league for like 5-6 years. Ow. He was the Henry Ellenson draft. He's been here for a while.
Oh God, I forgot about that guy.
He's 29 at $30 million a year. I'm good on that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I like dude. If you had asked me this like 3 years ago, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, if the roster was built the way it was, if we're talking like 3 years ago and there's Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham here, you know, and then I don't know. Give me Pascal from a couple years ago and I'll take it. Yeah. What about Scotty Barnes though?
Arthur brought up a good one too. Mikal Bridges.
Yeah, I don't know what Brooklyn wants to do, though. I got to wait to see the playoffs because the fact that the Grizzlies offered them 4 first-round picks for Mikal during the deadline, and they said no, even though they're probably going to be like, you know, bottom of the lottery, it's still 4 first-round picks. Like, you could do a lot with that in a trade. But man, Mikal Bridges is like the Iron Man out there. I think he's played like close to 400 games consecutively. He hasn't missed an NBA game since he's been drafted.
Dude, he hasn't missed a game since his junior year of high school.
He played 83 games this season. It's literally not possible. I love if we get Mikal in a pick or something, because again, I feel like the 2 is a lot more valuable than it might be. But it all depends on what does Brooklyn want. They want a decent playoff team, which they had previously, or do they want to really hit reset on this and still have watchable basketball?
Yeah, I think McAllis is one of those players. Like, he's kind of turning into like the guy in Brooklyn now.
Yeah,
I love him.
Yeah,
God,
it's funny because like now the Sixers drafted him, and now they're gonna play him in the first round.
Yeah,
like he would be such a beast right now in Philly.
Imagine that fit. Oh my gosh, that would be insane.
There'd be no Tobias Harris there. I'm sorry. Like they would have never given Tobias that contract.
And isn't he from Philadelphia? Like, isn't he from
Yeah.
that area? Which is crazy. You had a chance to draft the hometown kid who played phenomenally at Villanova. Isn't that where he's from, Villanova, right? And man, it was fucking nuts, man. You'd let him go for, who was it, Zaire Smith or something?
Yeah, peanut guy.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome.
It's funny because his mom worked for the Philly front office too.
Yep.
Which made it even worse.
Wait, Bridges' mom worked for the Philly front office.
Mm-hmm.
That is an insane rabbit hole. Wow.
But no, we're gonna trade your kid.
I gotta say though, no, I'm glad because Mikal went from 15 points a game to 27. And again, I have a very weird. Let's go off on a slight change. I have a very weird list of favorite players. It is Dame, and my 2 is unironically Mikal. So when I watch Suns games, I wouldn't shut the hell up about Mikal Bridges, and everyone would be like Devin Booker. I'm like Mikal Bridges, and it's just so good to see him thriving.
No, it's insane. Like I said, a Villanova guy. Like I said, they produce in the NBA. That's why, like if we're like at 4 or 5, like I'm drafting Cam Whitmore. Like, he could turn into that possibly. You never know. Like that's just insane. This is interesting because I know the media is just toxic, but Chris has a good question. If we get Wemby, we will have more TV games. Are y'all worried the media will start picking everything wrong with this team on a national level?
Do you mean like, are they talking about like nitpicking the roster and like everything Troy Weaver has done? Is that what we're talking about?
Like there would be a way bigger microscope if we get Victor, because you're going to have ESPN reporters around the team more. You're going to have way more national games. Like I think 3 of our national televised games actually got flexed by TNT this year. Like they're like, nah, we're going to do Bucks Miami instead of, Pistons Magic. I think what Chris is saying is like, are you afraid that the national media is going to nitpick every little thing that we're doing? Like, oh, let's say, Stackhouse is the coach. Oh, he ran a bad play. I think that's what he's trying to like ask.
I wouldn't really worry about it as long as LeBron James is playing still in the NBA because he still dominates the airwaves. But as soon as he retires, it might be a bigger cause, especially if like the national media gets in there and like they start destroying the core internally. That's when I would have a problem. But I think you got to take the risk with Wemby, man.
Of course. I think at the same time, we had the same issues when we got Cade because we never experienced the first pick before. And at least if you're going to be critical of our team, you're actually going to be watching the games. I think that's the biggest issue we've run into is a lot of people who have either critiqued the team or critiqued the organization without fully looking into it or investing themselves. And these guys are used to media. Are you telling me Cade isn't used to having a camera shoved in his face and asked a bunch of crazy questions, or Ivy or any of these guys for that matter?
Bro,
and I think they're all mature enough to handle it.
Cade's IG lives are the most random. I know this is like completely random. Like I swear, like I watched him with when Joey Chestnut was there.
Yeah, me too.
I was just like, oh, Cade's live. I was like, oh, James Wiseman's live. I was like, well, what the hell's going on? I clicked on Cade's and I was just like, dude, like the last time you went live, you were blowing bubbles with your daughter. Like it's just the most random times. It's just like, bro, like I love Cade. Like other than that, like before he got drafted, it was that kid. He was like all weird, and then he did the switch up. He's just like, "Where you going, Daddy?"
Yeah, that was so.
See you on draft night, Daddy. How long get him off? How long get him off?
He's like, "Come on, man, don't do that."
How long get him off?
Oh my god.
Kate's the GOAT though. Like every time I see that live, because like NBA pages will repost it. I was just like, bro, like that's a goated moment. Yeah, dude. It's just like, how do I get him out?
How do I get him out? What up, Deuce? How you doing, bro?
Oh man.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, bro. Like every time I see that, dude, I just laugh. Like I'm just happy we have a guy on the team that actually has a personality and not a robot.
Mm-hmm. The whole team's awesome.
They really are, man. Even though they only won 17 games, it was such a fun season, man, just to watch those guys play and develop, man. It was cool.
Yeah. I don't really think we have any more questions. Mike, if you have anything you're working on you want to plug, feel free to tell people where they can follow you and what you're working on these days.
I'm gonna type my YouTube in here. I've been grinding out a lot of that, but TikTok, hey guys, subscribe! ! I went to public school, excuse that spelling. But I'm on TikTok, Michael Carisse, Mike Carisse. You can find me. I do a lot of photography if you want to check that out for the G League, and I love doing that. I love making videos. I love basketball, although I can't play, and it's just a passion of mine. Appreciate you guys having me on. This was dope. I was telling Lance, you're doing something right when Pistons Talk wants you on, and it's like, man, I finally did it. My career's peaked here. There's nowhere to go but down, but I appreciate you guys.
No, dude, it was fun having you on, man. You're a great guy, man. It was cool. I'm sorry that I butchered your last name at the beginning, but I will be editing that out.
You got it right.
Oh, did I get it right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I don't even remember. Yeah. Okay, cool. Sweet. That was a little bit of private school education right there, just so we know.
All right, Lance, if you want to tell the people where they can find the podcast and how they can support it and give us a rating, why don't you do that for us?
Yeah, thank you guys for listening to the Pistons Talk Podcast. Do us a favor, go to Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe. After you subscribe, leave a review, drop a rating. But more importantly, tell a Pistons fan.
Peace, guys.